Hello, and welcome to the Poison Paint Factory. My factory designated name is Poison226. Nice to meet you. Hey, so we're going to be doing Pyramid Head today. I've primed him white as I normally do, and I've had to chip off a load of the primer that I used because I found more supports left. That was great. And like the last video, I'm doing mother colour. So I'm doing like a quick wash, I guess, with a very watered down red leather. I thought that this would be a good mother colour for Pyramid Head because it's that dirty red, which could be blood, or dirty brown, which could be leather. So it kind of fit everything that I want it to be, really. And there he is in all his glory. So I can actually see the details now, and I'm going to start blocking out the darkest sections I want to have the red leather as the prominent colour. That'll be the, oh there we go, the sword, the apron and his actual pyramid head. I'm going to do quite a lot of rust effects, going to show you once exactly what I do, and then the next couple of times that we do rust, obviously refer back to the original. And I'm not doing the skin here, as you can see, I'm actually doing the apron, which I wanted to be a real fleshy, kind of dried, leathery kind of colour, which I really like it for this. I know it's not true to the exact pyramid head colour scheme, but I thought this really represented him well. And I went really bright on these areas that you can see where his legs will be pressing against the apron, so you can see it's really pronounced. That was a lot of fun to do. Just remember not to overdo it and go over what you've already done too much. You want the last colour to still be showing. And as you can see, I'm still putting a little bit of red leather in each of these colours. Next, what I'm going to do, oops, I broke his sword. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, I started painting his helmet, his pyramid head next, because it's the next biggest area, and I thought, hey, why not, let's have a little playtime. So I did a lot of glazes, which you'll see, each time adding a little bit more of the new colour, as you'll see when we get to it. And just leave a little bit of the last colour after it's dried, and that's another thing to bear in mind. Make sure that each layer has dried before you start putting the next coat on, because it will scuff and it will look horrible. So have a hairdryer to hand like I did, and make sure each layer is dried before you start the next one. So we're getting really fancy with 3 different reds and the mother colour in this now, and each time getting closer and closer to the tip before we glaze it. A little bit of orange, and we're going to just be doing the tip and the sharpest points, like the ridge down the middle, and a couple of little scuffs and dints in the actual sculpt. I wanted them to stand out a little bit. And the reason why I wanted to do the red tip on his pyramid head was to make him really stand out, make your eyes drawn to the pyramid, because he doesn't actually have a face to look at. There's no eyes to have to deal with. It's a really fun model. As you can see, I've just put these little tiny dings, these little points where it would be reflecting. And I imagined that there would be a red light above him, like when you first see him in the game. There's like a really strong red light. I was imagining that he was walking into that light. Now I'm darkening down all the shadows beneath these cogs and dials, ready to do some highlights. This is the first kind of point where we start doing rust. So obviously I wanted some dark patches. You've got the red leather showing underneath, that's the general colour. And each time just doing tiny areas. You don't want to overdo it and make it look too rusty, because then it doesn't look rusty at all, it just looks wrong. So keep adding these colours to it. And you can see it's really starting to get these little bright patches. That's what you want, that's what I want from rust. A lot of this was feeling out the process because I've never really done rust before. I've done it once on a Necron a long time ago. Before rusty Necrons were kind of the norm. I was playing around with that, but he just looks a lot more brown rather than rusty. But still, you do these things and you learn as you go along. Don't ever be afraid to try something different, and don't ever be ashamed of something that's not quite turned out how you wanted to. You'll get there eventually. Just keep trying, keep persisting, watch many different YouTube videos and tutorials, and then you can kind of combine your favorite aspects of each one. I say that, but this video was me just trying out things and going, well, I've seen people do like bits of red, bits of brown, like little scuffs and like metal showing through paint, which I did on the Nemesis video, if you've seen that one. But here I'm just slapping down random patches because I want the whole thing to look rusty and have different areas and make it look really natural. So again, there'll be some bits where you see on here where I go in this deeper section with orange, and then I go back over it later with like a browny grey colour, because I thought, well, there'll be shadow in there, which I hadn't thought of when I started painting it. If you can hear that, that's Shadow, the factory cat. I think she thinks it's tea time. No, you don't want to talk anymore? Okay. But as you can see, I'm just kind of putting some little scratches and some little pockets, and when it starts to look a bit more interesting, I keep going over those areas. And now I'm just kind of going over it with a little bit of a glaze from the mother colour, just to kind of bring it all back together again, because the orange was overpowering a little, and as much as I want it to look really orange and rusty, I want it to look more natural as well, so you're getting a bit more depth there. But it's just about playtime, just play with it. The layers of paint are so thin that you're not going to get a build-up, and even if you do get a build-up of paint and it does look a little bit thick and textured, that's okay. It really doesn't matter. I've seen people use texture paint on something like this sword and dry brush it, and it works. It looks great, you know, so play around with techniques. This works for this model, but that doesn't mean the next time I go to do rust, I'll do it the same way again. I might combine a couple of different effects, or I might try and use some oxidization colours, you know, so you've got the like zinc colours like greens and blues and that kind of thing to show how the air is affecting the metal. You know, you can do what you want, it's your model. Don't let anyone tell you that you're doing it wrong. Speaking of doing it wrong, this is kind of a little video within a video. A long time ago, before I was trapped in the factory, I was invited to do a escape room. Now, anyone who's aware of escape rooms, you know the drill. You start off in a room as a team, and you find your way out of that room. You get into another room, and there's puzzles, and you've got to figure out how to get to the end, whatever the end is, this story that's been told to you. This particular room was called the Butcher. Now, if anyone has visited the UK or been to Nottingham, you might know of this one. But when we did it, you had to sign a waiver to say you're over 18 and you don't have any heart conditions, and we had to come up with a safe word in case things got a bit too intense. Now, the safe word was Bambi, if you were interested, because it would be something that you would be embarrassed to be screaming out loud, especially when you're terrified. But we started doing this escape room, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm not cut out for that kind of thing. I might be a spooky boy, but I can't handle the spooks. And when there's an actor coming in there with a leather apron and dragging something metal against the floor, very much Pyramidhead-esque, oh, I didn't like that. I didn't like that one bit. And the lights were out and my friends were around me and I knew that they weren't feeling it. And so one of my best friends was trapped in a room with the butcher coming at him. I was safe, I was locked in another room with some other people. But I didn't want my friend to get got. So I took one for the team and sucked in my pride and just screamed Bambi, 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 as loud as I could. Now, I don't know whether I scared off the butcher with my terrifying masculine screams, but he disappeared, and the next thing we knew, my friend was being dragged out of the room. It turns out that the butcher had got confused and thought that it was my friend who was trapped in the room with him, who was screaming Bambi to get out. And not only did I have the embarrassment of having to say the safe word and drop out early, but I also had to fess up to the actor who was taking my friend away. Actually, the person in the safest room, the room furthest from the butcher, was the one who chickened out and was screaming Bambi at the top of their voice. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is, do your research. If you're going to go in an escape room and it's called the butcher, you know what you're getting in for. And look after your friends. So, hopefully you don't look at me in too much of a different light after that story. If you're going to ask me, would I do it again? No. Did I wholly say Bambi to save my friend? I'll let you decide that. Back to the painting. As you saw, I did the skin, and that was all very much in purple tones, which is purely to keep away from the fleshy colour of the apron. And the base was done in very rusty tones, just like the sword. And as you can see on the left hand side of the screen, his right hand side, you've got those scuff marks on the floor, which I thought would be kind of cool to put in, because I imagine he's just been dragging his sword around and scuffed up where the rust was, and you've got these little thin lines. Now, how I actually did that was I had a little bit of paint on my brush, dried it off like it was almost a dry brush, but with a normal size brush, not a proper dry brush. And I just dragged it across over and over again. It didn't take too long, but I think it looks quite effective. I love this model, I'm so pleased with it, and the glazing is probably the best glazing I've ever done on a mini. It's something I've not done much of, but it looks really effective in here, in this particular model. He's quite big for a mini. He's probably about as big as a Space Marine, which for someone like this is quite a nice size. There's not too many details where I ever felt bogged down. There's as much or as little as you really want to paint on him. I decided to try and push myself with the highlights on the apron, and I don't think I said anywhere before now, but I actually put a little wash of like a dark colour, black I think it was, down the middle where his legs were, so that it defined the legs even further, and I put a little bit more on the back because I thought it was a little bit too bright, which kind of goes back to my previous point about just feel it out, trust the process, do what you want to do, and at the end of the day, you can't really mess it up. If you can't fix it with paint, you can always strip it, so paint bravely, try your best, and do what you want to do. And so, with all that said, Thank you for your time. I wish you a good day and many more besides. Yours, forever in horror, 226.